Emily had always loved visiting her grandfather's farm in rural Ohio. It was the one place that felt untouched by time, where the slow hum of cicadas mixed with the creak of windmills and the gentle sway of wheat in the fields. At 24, she was balancing graduate school and a part-time job, her life consumed by deadlines and the pressure to prove herself. But whenever she drove the 3 hours out to the countryside, her worries seemed to shrink against the vast openness of her grandfather's land. Her grandfather, Richard, was 78 years old and as resilient as the soil he had farmed his entire life. His hands were weathered, his face lined by sun and years of labor, but his eyes were still sharp with a mischievous sparkle. Emily admired him deeply, though she sometimes found his quiet way of teaching lessons a little mysterious. That Saturday morning, Emily parked her car by the fence and stepped out into the crisp air. The red barn stood proudly near the house, its wooden boards worn but strong, and the scent of hay and earth filled her lungs. Richard was waiting for her at the gate, leaning on his cane with a broad smile. "You're here early," he said, his voice steady but warm. "I couldn't wait," Emily replied, hugging him. "I missed this place." They walked together toward the barn. Emily noticed how carefully her grandfather moved, each step deliberate. Age had slowed him, but it hadn't broken him. When they reached the barn door, Richard swung it open and gestured for her to go inside. "Go on? I've got something to show you," he said with a sly grin. Emily stepped in, the familiar scent of hay washing over her. The barn was dim, lit only by shafts of sunlight slipping through the cracks in the wood. She turned to say something, but before she could, the heavy barn door shut behind her with a solid thud. The sound of the latch clicking into place made her blink in surprise. "Grandpa," she called, half amused, half confused. From outside came his calm voice. "Don't worry, Emily. I'll be right in. Just wanted to make sure we had some quiet time." A moment later, the door creaked open again, and Richard stepped inside, carrying a small lantern. He set it on a nearby crate, and the soft glow spread across the walls, revealing rows of tools neatly hung, each one shining with age and care. "I locked it," he explained, seeing the puzzled look on her face. "Because sometimes you need to shut out the noise of the world if you want to learn something worth remembering." Emily relaxed, a smile tugging at her lips. "So, this is a lesson, isn't it?" He chuckled. "Always is." For the next few hours, Emily followed him around the barn as he pointed out the old tools he had used for decades. He picked up a worn wooden mallet, the handle polished smooth from years of use. "This one helped me build the chicken coop when your mom was just a little girl," he said. "Every tool has a story, Emily, and every story has a lesson." Emily listened intently. He showed her saws, hammers, and plows, each one carrying memories of family milestones, hard winters, and moments of perseverance. She realized that her grandfather wasn't just showing her tools. He was passing down his wisdom in the way he knew best. At one point, Emily spotted an old trunk tucked away in the corner. Curious, she opened it and found photographs, letters, and keepsakes. She held up a faded photo of her grandfather as a young man standing proudly beside her grandmother, who had passed years ago. "I never saw this one," she whispered. Richard's eyes softened. "Your grandmother was the strongest partner I ever had. She taught me that even when the storms come, you hold on tight to the people you love. That's one lesson you'll need too." Emily felt a lump in her throat as she placed the photo gently back. She realized that this barn wasn't just a place for farming. It was a vault of family history filled with stories and lessons that stretched across generations. As the afternoon sun shifted, they sat on a hay bale together. Richard told her about the years he nearly lost the farm, the sacrifices he made to keep it running, and the joy of seeing his children grow up there. Emily shared her struggles in school and her doubts about whether she was on the right path. "Emily," her grandfather said firmly, "life isn't about having every answer. It's about showing up, working hard, and using the tools you've been given. The rest, it falls into place." Those words settled in her heart like seeds planted deep in fertile soil. Before long, they began organizing the barn, wiping dust off old tools, sweeping the wooden floor, and even laughing when Emily tripped over a stray rope. It felt less like chores and more like a bonding ritual. By the time the sun began to set, the barn looked refreshed, and so did Emily's spirit. As they stepped outside, the sky painted itself in hues of orange and gold. Emily turned to her grandfather, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing me your tools and for showing me what really matters." Richard pulled her into a gentle hug. "That's all I ever wanted, for you to remember where you come from and to carry it forward." The barn door stood behind them, now open wide, no longer a place of mystery, but a symbol of wisdom shared and love remembered. Emily knew she would carry that day with her for the rest of her life. And in the quiet of the farm, as the crickets began their nightly song, she understood that sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from classrooms or books, but from the steady hands of those who walk the path before us.